Let me show you something strange, my friend. Two people can earn the same income, live in the same city, even drive similar cars. Yet one of them quietly builds wealth, while the other slowly becomes financially fragile. And the difference often starts with a very dangerous feeling rich too early, because the moment someone feels rich, they often stop behaving like someone who is still building wealth. They start behaving like someone who already has it, and that small psychological shift can cost decades of financial progress. I've seen this pattern repeat itself again and again. Someone finally reaches a higher salary. Maybe they cross six figures. Maybe they finally feel ahead. And suddenly, life expands. A better apartment, a more expensive car, more dinners outside, more subscriptions, more upgrades that feel harmless in the moment. Individually, none of these decisions look dangerous. Together, they quietly absorb the future. Morgan Housel once wrote something very simple. Spending money to show people how much money you have is the fastest way to have less money. And this is exactly what happens when people start feeling rich before they actually are. Let me give you a real lifestyle example. Imagine two friends. Both earn $120,000 per year. The first one upgrades his lifestyle immediately. He leases a luxury car because the monthly payment fits the budget. He moves into a nicer apartment because the rent still feels manageable. He travels more because he finally feels like he deserves it. Nothing extreme, nothing irresponsible, just slightly elevated living. The second friend keeps living almost the same way as before. Maybe a small lifestyle improvement, but nothing dramatic. Instead of upgrading everything at once, he upgrades selectively. He upgrades his investments first. After 10 years, both friends worked equally hard, but their financial positions look completely different. The first friend has a lifestyle that depends on his income continuing forever. The second friend has a growing asset base that slowly reduces his dependence on income. Same salary, completely different future. Warren Buffett still lives in the same house he bought in 1958. Not because he cannot afford a bigger one, but because he understands something most people ignore. Lifestyle expansion is rarely reversible. Once spending becomes normal, reducing it feels painful. So instead of increasing expenses automatically, he increased investments automatically. Charlie Munger once said, "The big money is not in the buying and selling, but in the waiting." Waiting is easier when your lifestyle does not constantly demand more cash. Research from behavioral economics shows that people adapt to higher living standards extremely quickly. What once felt luxurious becomes normal in a surprisingly short time. Then the brain looks for the next upgrade, and the cycle repeats. This is called lifestyle inflation. Income rises, doesn't mean spending rises, expectations rise. But financial security often stays exactly the same. Because wealth is not built by how much you earn. Wealth is built by the gap between what you earn and what you keep. Naval Ravikant explained this clearly. The fastest way to wealth is spending less than you make and investing the difference. Simple sentence. Very difficult to practice in a culture constantly encouraging upgrades. Now here is where the feeling of being rich becomes dangerous. When people feel rich, they stop optimizing. They stop questioning recurring expenses. They stop negotiating prices. They stop tracking small financial leaks. Because small leaks feel insignificant when income feels large. But small leaks compound. A slightly more expensive apartment, a slightly more expensive car, a few extra monthly services, a few impulsive purchases that feel affordable. Each decision looks harmless. Together, they reshape the financial trajectory. Let me show you another comparison. Two people receive a salary increase from $60,000 to $90,000. Person A upgrades everything proportionally. Housing increases, transportation increases, daily spending increases. Person B upgrades one or two things that genuinely improve quality of life, but keeps fixed costs relatively stable. Person B converts most of the income increase into investment contributions. After 15 years, Person B has significantly more financial flexibility, not because of higher intelligence, but because of delayed lifestyle inflation. Studies show that fixed expenses are the most important factor in long-term financial stability. Variable expenses are easier to adjust, but fixed expenses create pressure that cannot easily be reduced. A large mortgage, an expensive car payment, high recurring commitments. These expenses transform income into obligation. Instead of money creating freedom, money maintains structure. This is why many high earners still feel financially stressed. Their income is high, but their flexibility is low. They built a life that requires constant performance. Ray Dalio often talks about the importance of financial resilience. Resilience means being able to absorb shocks, job loss, market volatility, unexpected expenses. People who feel rich too early often reduce resilience without realizing it, because they increase commitments faster than they increase financial buffers. The goal is not to avoid enjoying money. The goal is to avoid increasing fixed costs faster than assets grow, because assets eventually create options. Expenses create dependencies. Let's talk about a subtle shift that changes everything. Instead of asking, "What can I afford now?" smart investors often ask, "What will this decision cost me later?" A more expensive apartment is not just higher rent. It is reduced investment capacity every month. A more expensive car is not just a payment. It is reduced optionality. Optionality is the real measure of wealth. Can you change careers if you want to? Can you take time off if needed? Can you handle unexpected events without panic? Financial strength often looks invisible from the outside. It does not always show in visible consumption. It shows in flexibility. It shows in calm decision-making. It shows in the ability to wait. Jeff Bezos drove a modest car for many years while building Amazon, not because he lacked ambition, but because early capital was more valuable invested than displayed. This pattern appears frequently among long-term wealth builders. They delay visible consumption. They accelerate invisible growth. The challenge is psychological, because feeling rich creates social pressure to appear rich. Friends upgrade, colleagues upgrade. Social media normalizes constant lifestyle expansion. Suddenly, maintaining a modest lifestyle feels unusual. But unusual decisions often produce unusual outcomes. Let me give you a practical mental model. Imagine every lifestyle upgrade as a subscription to a future version of yourself. When expenses increase, future flexibility decreases. Every fixed expense is a commitment from your future income. The more commitments you create, the fewer options remain open. This is why many financially strong individuals keep their lifestyle surprisingly stable for long periods, because stability allows capital to accumulate quietly. Compounding requires time, and time requires patience, and patience becomes easier when expenses do not constantly increase. Another interesting observation: people often assume wealth creates confidence. But often confidence comes from financial margin. Margin means your expenses are significantly lower than your income. Margin reduces stress. Margin improves decision quality. Margin allows long-term thinking. When margin exists, short-term setbacks become manageable. Without margin, small disruptions feel catastrophic. This is why feeling rich too early can be risky, because the feeling encourages decisions that reduce margin, and reduced margin increases vulnerability. True financial confidence usually comes later than people expect. It often appears after years of consistent investing. After assets begin generating returns, after income becomes less critical, at that stage, spending decisions become less emotional because financial stability already exists. Until that point, protecting margin is extremely valuable. Protecting margin means being selective with upgrades, not eliminating enjoyment, just delaying unnecessary expansion. Many people dramatically underestimate how powerful this strategy can be. Increasing investment contributions early creates momentum. Momentum improves long-term outcomes. Even small, consistent investments can grow significantly over time. Index fund data across decades shows how patient investors benefit from long-term participation. The market fluctuates in the short term, but historically rewards long-term consistency. Consistency becomes easier when lifestyle pressure remains manageable. This is why some financially successful people appear surprisingly modest. They are not avoiding enjoyment. They are prioritizing optionality. Optionality creates freedom. Freedom creates confidence. Confidence reduces the need to prove financial success externally. At some point, the goal shifts. Instead of looking wealthy, the focus becomes becoming financially independent. Financial independence rarely comes from dramatic decisions. It often comes from repeated reasonable decisions. Spend slightly less than you could. Invest slightly more than expected. Delay upgrades slightly longer than others. These small differences accumulate over time. Feeling rich too early often encourages the opposite behavior. Upgrading too quickly, expanding too fast, reducing margin prematurely. True wealth often grows quietly, without immediate, visible signals, without dramatic lifestyle changes, without constant upgrades. Because wealth is not always visible in consumption patterns, it is often visible in financial resilience. So the next time income increases, instead of immediately upgrading lifestyle, consider upgrading investments first. Let assets grow before expenses grow. Let flexibility expand before commitments expand. Because feeling rich is temporary, financial independence is structural, and structure always outlasts emotion. The goal is not to look wealthy. The goal is to build a system that eventually makes income optional. And that process often begins by resisting the temptation to feel rich too soon, because sometimes the strongest financial move is simply continuing to live slightly below what you could afford, long enough for your investments to quietly change your future. And when that moment arrives, you won't need to feel rich. You will simply be free.